Hey YouTube. You know, if you can get past the brands, if you can get past the prejudices that you may have for the size and the false needs that manufacturers make you believe, let me just tell you that this MS-170 Stihl chainsaw, Stihl, steel, whatever, has been serving me pretty well. I'm really happy with this little chainsaw. I think I paid $175 for it, something like that, $150. And the only thing that's gone wrong with it actually is this gas cap. What happened was, from using the screwdriver in there to loosen it, because it got to be fairly tight or it drips gas, it actually wore a little hole in there and it started dripping. So I just took some epoxy and covered it over, and it does have to be tight enough that I have to use the wrench. I mean, if you're young and you got a good grip on you, you might be able to tighten it up good, but I've been using a wrench to pair of not vice grips, but water pump pliers to make it happen, and it seems to work pretty good. So, you know, if you're in the market for a chainsaw and you don't have a problem with size of anything, I'm just telling you that this MS-170 is a nice little saw. The chain profile is slightly different than what it would be for a bigger chainsaw, and you do have to get chains. I had to get an extra blade only because I had an accident with the chainsaw. It was sitting out and somebody set it behind my truck and I backed over it. But other than that, I bought a new blade and just a bunch of chains. The chains are easy to sharpen, and I really had no problem with it. So like I say, if you can get past the brand and you can get past size, this is a good little chainsaw to buy for a good price. I don't know if you guys can hear the thunder, but it looks like it's going to start raining. I'm making a new lid for the eggery section of our chicken coop. I had originally made it, when I made the chicken coop, I used OSB, which is a joke, but I used OSB. I'm going to use pine boards to make the lid, because the OSB actually sucked up so much moisture that my wife can't even pick it up anymore. So I need to fix that, because she needs to get eggs in the morning. Putting a shiplap on this so the water won't find its way between the two boards so easily. Well, here comes the rain, so now I got to get inside quick. Boy, I hate this weather. I wish it would just stay nice for a couple of weeks. I need to sell one of these pickup trucks. That's what I need to do. I got too many trucks in my garage. Guys, I want to do a little comparative moisture readings, just to give you an idea of things around you that you may not be aware of. This is the moisture content in a 2x4 that's in my greenhouse. So the greenhouse is fairly a high moisture area, I would say, simply because of the fact that there's plants and a lot of water in here because it's a hydroponic greenhouse. So it's not going to be that much higher, but it's a little bit higher. So that would be a typical 2x4, in an outbuilding, I would say. Now at the same time, I have in my greenhouse, I have stored this red oak lumber. So let me just push this in here. If I take a reading on this, I'm doing this with one hand here, so let me push the board. There we go. Okay. So you can see this board here has taken on a little bit more moisture. Let me just check it in the middle of the board here. I don't like ruining boards, but you can see roughly 12% or so. Yeah. So it's like 1% higher than what it is on the side of the building here. But I also have a fan in here that's running constantly to help move the pollen around from the plants, and also keep the floor dry from any hydroponic work that might be spilling around here. Yeah, 13%. So all of this lumber that's in here had basically been kiln dried at one point, and was down around 9%. But really, 9% locally is fairly low. And I'm going to check some of the moisture readings inside the house as well to see just how things compare to one another. This is a reading of some treated wood that sits outside. Now you can see we've been having a lot of rain, and this is fairly high. This wood has been outside since oh my gosh, I must have this thing up here at least 5 years or longer. So it's 25% there. That's on a treated frame to the garden. So I'm inside a room inside the house. That's an entryway to the house, and you can see that this wood's like 10%, so it's a little lower than what sitting outside would be, or sitting in the, without anything affecting it. This is the oak boards that are on the kitchen cabinets. This is a piece of furniture in the house, red oak. So this is a reading of my workbench in the garage. So you can see it's a little bit higher and about the same as what it is inside the greenhouse, because during the summer months I'm sort of cooling the garage, but I'm not heating it at this point. Now in the winter time, when the garage is being heated, this would be much lower. So this is the siding then that I have laying outside, that I was hoping to have the sun dry a little bit because I want to put some treatment on this. And it's pretty wet because of all the rain we've had now in the past couple days. So it's not doing too well drying here. But you see that this lumber here is 26%, and I'm going to show you what it looks like in the kiln. Now, just to give you a good idea of how well the drying takes place in the kiln, this piece of pine was taken from the same tree that those pieces of siding were taken from. Same day. I cut that siding on, I believe it was Monday, Labor Day, and I also put this piece of white pine in here on Labor Day. So I just want to show you the difference. Look at the percentage here. I'm at 17%. That's being in the kiln for less, or let's see, yeah, less than a week. Today's Thursday, so it's been in the kiln for 4 days. So it dries pretty rapid in here, especially with the high temperatures. Although today we have a relative humidity there of, oh, that's 60%, which is, you know, actually it's too high for drying. But at this point, you know, this is what the weather's like at the moment. I get a lot of questions as to whether or not the kiln works effectively. Now you just saw what I saw. I mean, you know, yes, this wood's been laying out in the rain, but nonetheless, like let's look at a board that's sort of underneath here, not getting hit so much with rain. It's still at 25% compared to what's in the kiln there at 17%. So there's a major difference in what's taken place there. Now this oak here for the crane, if you look, that's at 21%, roughly 20%, and that was actually lower when we put the crane together, but from it being outside in the rain, it's pulling some moisture to itself, and I expected it to do that. I mean, you know, I had this backhoe running this morning. This is how much water we got in the past half hour. The sun's out now, but in a half hour ago the backhoe was empty because I was using it. Anyway, you can see the water still running off here. But I figured you might be interested in something like that with the siding. And I just wanted to show you this as well. This is inside my lumber mill shed. So this is the inside of the siding there. 14% on the inside. Now I think it's at 14 because, like, if you remember when I just showed you a couple minutes ago, inside the greenhouse, it was 11%, the framing lumber that was in the walls. Let me check this framing lumber. Yeah, 15%. And it's been raining pretty hard here, and one side of the mill is actually open, so you know you're going to get a lot more moisture in here, but it's not that much. You're talking 2% more moisture, which is not a lot considering all the rain we've been getting. I think a telephone pole, that's what this is a good indicator as to what moisture really is in the outside. You know, this is what the pole has sucked up all these years just sitting here. I'm just doing a comparison here because I know it's going to rain again. I can hear the thunder. And I just want you to see, you know, what some of this is. Now, this pine, I'm going to show you this pine, has, it's been cut down probably less than a month. You can see where that stands. It's well up into the 30s, or into the 30s I should say. So guys, you might be asking yourself, has Joe lost his mind because he's going around from one thing to another doing a moisture reading? This piece of white pine I have here was actually on the bottom of the wood pile over there, and like the other things inside the garage, it's at 14%. The amazing thing, and you know, this is a piece of fiberboard that I'm holding here. Now you would think that MDF would be a lot, you know, less moisture in it, when if you look at that, It's the same thing as everything else in the garage. So why is Joe checking all this stuff? Well, because here's why. We dry wood because if you make something out of wood that's very wet, and the moisture that it's going to get to and stay is very dry, you're going to have cracking and all kinds of movement with the lumber. For instance, if this was like a piece of siding and the moisture content was 36%, and I nail the siding, let's say, in 2 places, by next year this time, when the siding would be down to, say, 11, there would be splits and cracks in here. One reason why when you hang siding, you try to put 1 nail per side, 1 nail into the siding so that it can move around that nail, shrink and swell above the nail or below the nail. So let me check your moisture. So anyway, what I'm getting at here is, again, you want to dry lumber according to what the uses are. So if framing lumber, no matter where you put it, is approximately 14%, then you can dry framing lumber to 14% and it should be good. Now, framing lumber is actually dried to 19% before it's shipped out. I don't know if you've ever checked framing lumber, but if you check it, it's fairly high. And if you've ever bought lumber at Lowe's and you found yourself wiping the resin off of your hand, or the sap from grabbing the logs, or the boards, I mean, it's because it's that high at 19% or even higher, depending upon, how it was shipped, how long it sat on cars, what the weather was like from the area that it was going through. So if I dry lumber, framing lumber, to 19%, and around here it'll go to that naturally. I can get lumber outside to go down to 19% or better. Now, with rain and all, naturally it's going to fluctuate. But I can, if I keep it covered, get it down to around 19, which is standard for framing lumber. Now, when it comes to furniture, like in the video here, you'll see where I had checked a piece of red oak that I used to make a table. I think it was last year or the year before, and that red oak was down around 5 or 6%, I think it was. I have to check the video again, but either way, I think it was 6%. If you think about that, you can't go making furniture with 19% moisture content and then throw it into a 6% moisture content area, because it's going to shrink and it'll probably crack. So this is why a lot of the times when I work with wood, I try to do most of my woodworking in the fall, because in the fall and winter of the year, that's when I'm going to have the wood inside the garage here that I'm going to be working on. So the moisture content is going to be down around 9% because of the heat or so. And from 6 to 9, 3 percentage points, even though it's not, the recommended thing, it's not as bad as going from, say 5% or 6% up to 19% or even higher. So that's the purpose for drying lumber. It's, where are you going to be using it? If you're going to use lumber outside, let's say you're going to build a fence from the stuff that I'm cutting. If you use white oak, for instance, and let's say the moisture content is 36%, and then all of a sudden, you cut boards out of it, they're still around 30. If you kiln dry it for a week or so, you can probably knock 10 points off of it. It would hold up better when it's closer to the 19 that it's going to be outside. Now, you saw that telephone pole that I checked there was at 25%. So that's giving you an idea of just how much moisture is absorbed into the lumber that's, around us every day. So we need to realize that. And moisture also plays a part in rot. When you have a certain moisture content, mold and stuff, which is, the beginning of rot, is present, and it starts to play a part in how long something's going to last. I noticed that some of the 2x4s that I cut out of the pine the other day. It was the same pine tree, different logs, and I didn't videotape that. There's a lot of logs I cut that I don't videotape. But what I'm saying is, when I cut the lumber, it's at 19% right now, sitting on the air dry pile. That same lumber I think you saw was down to 17% inside the kiln, or less. And you know, sometimes what I'll do is I'll take nice looking pine boards, put them in the kiln, because I'm going to make furniture or bookcases out of those. I like pine bookcases because they're not so heavy to move around. But yeah, so this is the whole point with moisture. You know, moisture content depends on where you're going to use it. If you're going to cut up lumber and use it to build a fence, there's no real need to be trying to dry it. If you want to dry it, then take it down to 19% and then treat it, or less. If you take it down below 19 and you put treatment on it, it'll probably absorb the treatment better. It depends on what it is. White oak doesn't do well absorbing a treatment, but something like pine wood, you know, W-O-U-L-D, would accept it a little more, you know, readily. But if you get the moisture content low enough that it's lower than what it is outside, and then you treat that, it's going to absorb that prior to absorbing anything else when you put it back outside. At least that's my theory, and I've proven it a couple of times to myself just by checking the moisture of things. Right, Bullseye? Right? So anyway, that's this video. You can see it's getting darker already. Again, the sun was just shining when I sat down here. This is so disgusting, this weather. But that's a little bit on moisture meters. And I had made a comment about this moisture meter. It's a General brand I got. It's a pin type. I got it from Lowe's, I believe. I think it was around $30 or $40. I'm not positive about that. But here's the thing. If you check stuff and it compares with other things, even if it's not 11% in the greenhouse and it's 12% or 14%, it doesn't matter because I'm comparing that to other things. So as long as you use it as a comparative type meter, you should be fairly accurate. I would not, you know, guarantee you that the number that comes up here is exactly what it is, but I would compare this, you know, closely with other things. So if somebody lives in the area and you check your 2x4s or some lumber in your house, let's say, maybe in the attic, and it's a certain moisture content, I would say that so is your neighbor's. So if you go to build something for that person, you know, you want to build it according to whatever the moisture content might be. So like I had showed you the door for the chicken coop. Now that moisture content on that thing I think was at 19%, and that's fine because it's going to go, if it wasn't that, it would go up to that. That's actually a little bit high, but it's going in an area where it's going to stay high. The only thing is I'm going to keep that thing in the garage, let it go down a couple percentage points, and then I'm going to coat it with, I'd like to use copper coat, but I'm not going to because of the chickens. I'm not positive whether it would affect them or not. So what I'll do is I'll just put some kind of a stain on top of it, leave it dry a couple days, and then I'll put the door on the chicken eggery when I'm done. Have a good one, guys. I hope that helps. One other thing I want to add to this video today. We planted this, I'm pretty sure we planted this back in February. And you can see how nice those leaves are. We've been taking lettuce. Now, these look more like they're going to seed. However, we can still pull lettuce from these. And what's going to happen here soon is these two top ones, we are going to be replanting again. So what we'll do is we'll take these planters out of here and we'll put new seedlings in and get new lettuce to grow. But it's September 6th or 7th today, and Thursday, and I was just saying, my wife and I have been eating this lettuce. 3 times a week we take lettuce. Now, granted, these 3 things here are not enough for 3 times a week, but it's at least once or twice a week that we can pull lettuce from here. And it doesn't take long. She's been cutting this almost, you know, every week she'll cut a bowl of lettuce or better, every maybe 2-3 times a week. off of these plants. So it sort of pays to have stuff like this growing. And you know, it's not so much that lettuce is expensive, but this is very fresh. And if you've ever grown lettuce in water hydroponically, it is very good, and it has a nice texture to it and has a nice taste to it. Thought you might want to know that.